Hello and welcome to the Big Story podcast. I am your host Hridayesh Joshi. India is at the heart of a massive energy transition. We are adding renewable capacity at a record pace. More clean energy is being added every year. A significant portion of it, however, is going unused due to grid constraints, transmission bottlenecks, and lack of flexibility in the system. So, this is a paradox where we have a lot of capacity building, a lot of capacity of renewable energy, but we are unable to use it. So the big question is, are we focusing too much on building capacity and not enough on actually using it? To unpack this, I am joined by today Sunil Mani, who is Senior Advisor at International Institute for Sustainable Development, IISD. He is an expert who has closely studied and monitored the energy system policy, and he understands the economics of it. Sunil, welcome to Big Story Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much. So I would like to start with a question. How do you view, how should India shift the policy focus? As we all know, and we have, I would like to tell our viewers that we have done a story. Sunil is also mentioned there. His reports are also hyperlinked there. You can go and read. Sunil, how do you view the entire scenario now, the policy focus where, adding megawatts to maximizing utilization of existing renewable capacity? How do you look at it?
Yeah, I think that's a very good way to start the discussion. So, as you said, India has been extraordinarily successful in terms of building renewable energy capacity, particularly solar energy, as over 150 gigawatt of solar capacity has already been installed in India, and most of that has happened in the last decade or so. And
Right.
because of these achievements, India is now amongst the top solar nations in the world. In fact, India ranks third in global RE installed capacity after China and the US. So this type of scale up was the right sort of first priority for India, and it has paid off very well. But the natural next chapter is about maximizing the value of what has already been built and using every unit of renewable energy efficiently. Today, we do see occasional solar curtailments happening, and it is not because we have too much renewable energy in the system, but it's because the system was designed for steady coal power and not variable solar and wind. So maybe you can think of it this way: the sun shines the brightest between 10 a.m. in the morning and 4 p.m. In the afternoon, but that is also the time when most people are at work or school, and factories are running at a steady pace. So the demand for electricity is actually not that high during these hours. And evening is when the demand really spikes because people come home, switch on fans and ACs, and then they cook dinner, they watch TV, and etc. etc. So we have a situation where solar is producing a lot of electricity in the afternoon, but very few people need that much electricity at that particular moment. And in the evening, when everyone needs it, the sun is already set. So now you might say, okay, just store the afternoon solar and use it in the evening. And that's exactly right. That's what batteries are for. But right now, India does not have enough battery storage to do that at scale. We are slowly building up our storage capacity as well. And there's another problem, associated with this. The system is designed for baseload coal power. So we have coal or thermal power plants running all the time, and these plants cannot be switched off and on like a fan. They are more like a pressure cooker, that has been heating for hours, but you can't stop it suddenly. They need to keep running at a minimum level at all times so that
Right.
they can generate electricity during the evening as well.
So Sunil, if I could come quickly and just explain the viewers who are not very well versed with the subject, what Sunil is trying to explain us is that we have a renewable energy capacity, but there are two three problems about. One is about grid inflexibility, another is about the transmission bottleneck, and also the battery storage which you are mentioning. But the paradox which he is mentioning is this, that solar is available at daytime, and daytime the demand is low. People are at work. We do not have that much demand. during the daytime, but solar is available only at the daytime because we do not have that much battery storage so that we can store and transmit it in the evening. Also, very important thing he's underlining here is that coal plants have to run at a minimum capacity. So we can't shut down coal plant during the daytime because we need coal power, because then the solar is not available at a minimum capacity. So these are the two, three constraints which are causing this curtailment of solar. And please go on.
Yeah. So like as you said, like even when the sun is producing a lot of electricity in the afternoon, the coal plant is still running, and there is simply no room, on the grid for all the solar power that is being generated. So the grid operator has no choice in this situation but to tell the solar plant to stop producing for now, and that is what curtailment means that you also covered just now. To address this, there can be various solutions. Battery storage is one, as I just mentioned. Another is we can also deepen our electricity markets. So India has already built, short-term power markets, but the next step is basically to make them deeper and more liquid, so that all the surplus renewable electricity that we have can flow across states and find demand in real time. And in
Hmm.
fact, a very recent and important step that the government of India has taken in this direction is the approval of 500 megawatt contract for difference pilot, which is approved by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy (MNRE). Basically, just to give viewers some context, so today most clean energy in India is sold through long-term fixed contracts called power
Right.
purchase agreements. When where the supplier and the buyer get into an agreement that they will continue to purchase electricity at a certain price, which is of course fixed in the contract itself, and this PPA is generally for a period of 25 years.
Hmm.
And these PPAs have certainly helped India in scaling renewables quickly, but it is also important to highlight that these PPAs don't reflect what electricity is worth in real time.
Right.
So under a contract for difference, the CFD pilot that the government of India is planning to run now, um, what happens in CFD is they, instead of signing a long-term PPA, the RE developer actually sells power directly in the electricity market, where
Hmm.
power prices fluctuate every half an hour based on the actual demand and supply situation. And the government, what it does is it guarantees a minimum price, which is basically discovered through a competitive auction in the beginning itself. And
Right.
that price could be anywhere. Say, let's say it is around 4 rupees. So when the supplier, the renewable energy supplier is in the market to sell the electricity, and let's say if the market price falls below the level of 4 rupees, let's say 3.5 rupees, so there is a gap
Hmm.
of 50 paisa, that the government, that gap is basically will be covered by the government using the stabilization fund. And
Hmm.
this stabilization fund, the government has allocated 76 crore rupees just to manage these sort of fluctuations in the real time market. Similarly, like if the electricity sold in the open market rises above that level of 4 rupees, let's say 4.5 rupees, then the developer actually puts the additional 50 paisa that they received from selling the electricity back into the fund.
So can I make a bit simple for the people who do not understand this, this language of market and the energy? What you are trying to say that anyone will put money in the market if he has a fair assurance that he will get the returns also. Number one.
Right, right.
Number two. Number two. When the solar is available, we will encourage the people so that they use it in daytime and they will get cheaper power, and later in the evening they should have a sense that the power will be costly, so they will, that's the way you encourage people to use it. This is one thing, but could I ask you, if we move forward, a question? One solution which we discussed at the start is about the battery storage. If we move to our next question, how do you look at it? How optimistic is the scenario when we talk about solution is battery storage?
Right. So, right now, the storage capacity that we have in the country is around 1 gigawatt hour, whereas as per the national electricity plan that the government of India has, we plan to have around 400 gigawatt hours of battery storage by 2031-32. Um,
Okay.
so we are at a very small capacity right now. But it is also important to highlight that the battery costs have fallen dramatically in the last 3 years. For instance, the tariff, which was somewhere around 10 rupees in 2023, is now at around 3 rupees per kilowatt hour, as per some of the recent tenders that we've seen. So this dramatic decline in battery cost is actually now unlocking India's vast solar potential, making round the clock solar electricity a viable and economically competitive alternative to fossil based electricity, which is primarily the coal. In fact, there's this research also that came earlier this week from Ember, which basically says that solar plus batteries can actually economically meet up to 90% of India's electricity demand, and that too at below the cost that most distribution companies in India are already paying to purchase power that they eventually sell to their consumers. So this is a major shift. Storage is no longer a future technology; it is becoming mainstream grid infrastructure. And in fact, also in one of the recent tenders from MERC in Maharashtra, we found that cost of firm and dispatchable renewable energy, which is the FDRE, which basically combines solar, wind, and batteries to provide reliable round-the-clock power. It discovered a tariff of somewhere around 4.7 to 4.8 rupees, which is very close to the new coal-fired power plant, which also stands at somewhere around 5 rupees. And in fact, it is actually much lesser than the average power purchase cost for most of the Indian states. So
Yeah.
yeah, so as I said, like the cost is coming out drastically, and real world tenders are showing that firm renewables are arriving almost exactly at the cost of new coal.
So the two things, apart from this battery storage, lack of battery storage, and the two things were responsible for the curtailment of clean energy. They are transmission bottlenecks and also the grid inflexibility. FDR is actually because coal is more quote unquote dependable power, which is available when you have started the coal power plant, but you do not know when the sunlight will be proper or more, and when it will be less, when the wind will be blowing there. So people who do not want to believe outside the coal, they say that, oh, there's not dependable power, but FDRE actually cuts this risk, and it's a package which is provided all kind of green energy. Is it correct?
Yes, 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 absolutely. You are correct. In fact, maybe I can just clarify the idea of FDRE. So, for instance, let's say if you are a state electricity company, your job is to make sure that solar the power is available at all hours, not just at noon when the sun is shining the brightest. Solar is cheap, but it also disappears after sunset, so you can't rely on it alone. So almost 3 years ago in 2023, the government introduced this new type of tender, which is called firm and dispatchable renewable energy, or for FDRE. So what happens is that in FDRE, instead of buying just plain vanilla solar, you buy a complete package which supplies electricity using a combination of solar panels, wind, as well as storage. And storage may primarily include battery storage for now. And the developer basically promises to supply power at the specified hours when you actually need the power, and
Okay.
you just the buyer, the discom, just has to specify when they need it, the demand pattern. Like, let's say we need this much power morning 8 a.m., this much power morning 9 a.m., and things like that. So you can then
Yeah.
specify, and then you get the specified and if they don't deliver power as per the specified demand pattern, then they have to pay a penalty as per the
Right.
regulation. So that's what
Yeah.
FDRA is, that it actually is a renewable energy, but with a reliable guarantee.
Yes. Moving on, do you really feel that we need to expand transmission network, which is very important? Government can play a role because land acquisition is also sometimes decentralization of it. We have got power plant, solar power plant in Rajasthan, and the consumer is sitting in Telangana. So rather than doing this, we should start identifying the places where the consumer is, and we have capacity of solar building there. We should work on that also, or both.
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely. I think we need to work on both expanding transmission lines as well as expanding on the decentralized and distributed energy sources. So, as you said, like India's best renewable resources are geographically concentrated in particular states like Rajasthan, where most of the solar is concentrated, and in Tamil Nadu,
Gujarat.
yeah, where most of the wind is there. So these states are, geographically like quite distant from some of the largest centers of electricity consumption, let's say in Delhi or in Mumbai or in Bangalore. So, and in fact, National Electricity Plan has already laid out an ambitious vision for interstate transmission corridors, and those investments are, essential to unlocking the full potential of India's renewable resource base. So, government is actually doing a lot of work, and that should absolutely continue and accelerate. But
Yeah.
as you mentioned about the decentralized and distributed energy, that also offers something very valuable. It can begin delivering results right after the installation, because transmission line expanding them may take, let's say, 2 to 3 to 4 years. Whereas, the moment you install decentralized renewable energy like rooftop solar, you start getting benefits, electricity immediately. So we don't have to like really wait for grid infrastructure projects, which are typically longer duration projects with longer gestation periods. So in fact, when you cite such sources, right at the point where demand is actually there, you can actually improve local reliability and reduce stress on the transmission network, and make better use of the renewable capacity that is already being built. And this local generation also, reduces the land acquisition challenges that you just mentioned, which actually are, some of the biggest challenges that India is facing right now, is actually one of the biggest challenges that India is facing right now for large scale utilities solar projects. So yeah, I mean, just to answer it in one sentence, the most realistic pathway is a hybrid system where we continue to expand the transmission line while expanding, the DRE solutions as well.
If I could move to your core area, where I would like to inform the viewers that we would like to share a link of your report on e-cooking. So since this war in Gulf, and it's a very sad scenario in a way, that a lot of people have lost their life, it has created a problem for people in terms of kitchen cooking also, domestic as well as commercial. Because LPG and PNG, both we are dependent in import. So you have got one solution, that we should increase the e-cooking, which is very important. So how do you look at it? How much this e-cooking can help us when our urban infrastructure, though it is still working, but in rural areas we can't depend much on electricity, and also you need some appliances, some new kind of pressure cookers and pots for this. So how do you look at? Give us an overview how e-cooking can help. How much is this practical? This solution.
Right. So, as you mentioned, also like India imports most of the LPG, from other countries. In fact, India imports around 60% of the LPG, that we use in the country, and that's the most important cooking fuel for the country right now. And when you purchase LPG from outside, every cylinder that you're using is also money leaving the country, right? So, what if we used some of the surplus solar power that we were just discussing, the power that is currently being wasted? Can we use that to cook instead? And that's what electric cooking, could be about. And in fact, our research at IISD, we also found that for most urban households, electric cooking is actually going to be cheaper to run than LPG, and in fact also PNG. But people are still, slowly making the switch, mainly because the upfront cost of buying an induction appliance and the compatible utensils is actually quite high right now. But we still see that induction based cooking is actually already working for millions of urban Indian households. And we did a field work in certain cities, metropolitan cities, where we actually spoke to various induction using households, and we found that people who had adopted electric cooking are actually largely satisfied with it, and they are also saving money on their monthly cooking bills. And just to give you some context, like the math is simple. At current prices, a typical household using LPG or PNG exclusively for cooking would spend more than 7,000 rupees in a year. But if you shift to electric cooking, the same cooking on electricity, would cost only around 5,800 to 5,900 rupees. So you can save, you can easily save around 50 to 20% on your cooking energy related costs if you switch to electric cooking. And it will also work for most of the urban households, because most of the urban households also have the paying capacity to basically switch to in electric.
So here I would like to give one example as a reporter. When I was traveling in Madhya Pradesh, I saw a lot of people have, and I'm not saying this is happening at a massive scale, but this is happening everywhere in the country. Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Yojana, because government is giving subsidy and people are using this rooftop solar and their bills have gone down nearly zero, but they have invested some money. Government has given them some help. So this e-cooking, where people do not have to fear about nearly zero bill, so they can use this e-cooking and get rid of this LPG problem. Even if they don't get rid of, they can reduce this pressure of getting their LPG cylinder filled every month, because then they will be using microwave and other kind of utensils, utensils which you are saying. So is it not true that if we increase our solar, if we reduce our solar curtailment, and if you could optimize and can use more and more the clean energy, this e-cooking thing will be a viable option in future.
Yes, definitely it can be a viable option. The only thing is that most of the electric cooking that we use, the load comes either during the morning or during the evening hours, right? When the sun is still not there. So we need to do something about it. We need to perhaps, combine it, electric cooking, rooftop solar along with battery storage. So some that sort of setup that we need to explore if we really want to utilize the electricity that is being produced by let's say the rooftop solar, which basically households are adopting under the Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. So yeah, we need to explore such combinations to be able to actually use that electricity more effectively. And in fact, a system of 1 kilowatt rooftop solar generally, typically generates around 100 units of electricity in a month. Whereas, as per our estimation, household relying exclusively on electric cooking would only need around 80 units of electricity in a month, 80 to 85 units, which means that a system of 1 kilowatt rooftop solar would be sufficient to meet the cooking energy requirement for a household, for a typical household in India. The
Okay.
only thing that we need is to somehow combine it with the battery, so that then they are able to use it effectively.
So before we close this discussion, I would like to answer you one question which you have mentioned in your the report, that in rural areas you have provided an option, and a lot of other people are also discussing this about the biogas. So I have grown in a village where we have seen these biogas, gobar gas plants, we would say there, but they require a lot of water and some certain land. So how optimistic are you about the biogas thing, where electricity is not still a bit of problem?
Yeah, no, definitely. Rural India is a very different story, and it needs a different solution, at least for now, till the time we don't have reliable electricity available. So, biogas is certainly one such solution. It is basically a gas produced from organic matter, small household level biogas plant that runs on farm waste, and of course you need a lot of water, and you also need land to install those biogas plants. Um, and and in return it basically gives you cooking fuel, and it also provides us useful fertilizer as a byproduct. And it is also a renewable energy source that is generated locally, and costs almost nothing. So if you have two kettles, then you can easily run a biogas plant, which can then meet all of the cooking energy requirements throughout the year, and it also costs almost nothing to run once installed. And we also did some field work with in multiple states, where we found that some households who had adopted biogas plants were actually quite satisfied. But what we essentially need for biogas to work, and this is what we found from our field work, it needs land availability, it needs cattle availability, it needs water availability, but it also needs a robust operation and maintenance network. Because wherever we have seen biogas plants not working well, in those places the biggest reason was that there was absence of robust operation and maintenance networks. Households did not know how to use the biogas plants effectively and efficiently, and because of which they stopped working after a certain period of time. So only wherever we found biogas plants working and being successful, um, we saw that all those places had like very robust decentralized network of professionals who were actually guiding households in terms of how to utilize, how to use the biogas plants, and also making sure that the regular operation and maintenance are also taking place, so that if there is any sort of issues like leakage or leakage and all, you can easily figure that out and then address them. So this is actually a very very important condition for its longevity that we found. And another thing is, biogas plants are actually quite expensive to adopt. Government of India is actually providing around 40% subsidy, if you want to install a biogas unit. But that subsidy itself is not sufficient. And wherever we found, households adopting biogas, they did receive some external support, let's say from some CSR funds, and only then they were able to actually buy it. So we need to also provide either additional sources of funding, or maybe government can also think of perhaps increasing the subsidy on every biogas unit. Or they will the households will also need easier access to financing. Let's say if they want to adopt a biogas plant, it will at
Hmm.
least cost them 30 to 40,000 rupees. So they will also need some sort of easier financing, so that then it is easier for them to adopt it. Of course, the biogas plant will pay back in the long term, because you then don't have to pay the recurring cost that you usually incur with fuels like LPG or even electric cooking. Yeah.
Right. Sunil, thank you so much for joining us. And this subsidy issue is a kind of vast issue and somewhat contested also. But for now, thank you so much for giving us so many important insights. That was Sunil Mani from IISD. If you want to read the whole story, please go to our website. It is www.carboncopy.info. The link will be there in the description box. And we will be soon with you with a special story and a special podcast. This was produced by my colleague Riddhi Tandon, and we will be back soon. Until now, goodbye.